From the moment she stepped onto the SEAL training grounds, it was clear that this journey would not be easy. The air was thick with tension, the kind that only comes when a group of highly trained soldiers meets a newcomer who seems, at first glance, completely out of place. She was young, determined, and fiercely ambitious, but she knew that determination alone would not be enough. The first days were brutal, filled with long hours of physical training, strict routines, and constant observation. Every step, every movement, every breath seemed to be judged, and she quickly realized that her presence alone had sparked doubt and curiosity among her peers. Her classmates, mostly men with years of experience or raw physical strength, were immediately skeptical. Some whispered behind her back, casting sideways glances as if to say, "She doesn't belong here." Their words were not loud, but they cut through the air like sharp blades, and she could feel the weight of their disbelief pressing down on her. The first obstacle course was the perfect stage for them to mock her. Heavy ropes, steep walls, and uneven terrain were meant to test every ounce of strength, endurance, and agility. She stumbled, faltered, and even fell at one point. A chorus of jeers followed her, and the words she would hear over and over again during these first days echoed in her mind. "You're not a sniper!" Despite the mocking, she refused to respond. She didn't cry. She didn't argue. She simply kept moving forward. Each fall, each slip, and each moment of exhaustion became a lesson. She started to study the movements of those around her, learning from their efficiency, noting where they gained speed, where they slowed down, and how they tackled each challenge. She began to internalize every critique, whether spoken or implied, turning doubt into fuel for her determination. The instructors were equally unrelenting. They pushed her beyond her perceived limits, expecting flawless execution even from someone clearly new to the world of elite training. Their eyes were sharp, scanning every trainee for weakness, and any mistake was immediately noted and addressed. At first, this felt overwhelming. The weight of expectation, combined with the relentless mockery from her peers, made her question whether she could truly belong in such a demanding environment. But she discovered something crucial early on: resilience. Every time she fell behind, every time a voice mocked her, she found a small spark of resolve. She began to wake up before sunrise, practicing movements in the shadows, rehearsing drills quietly in corners where no one could watch. She observed her classmates' techniques carefully, learning from their strengths, analyzing their errors, and silently vowing that she would not just keep up, she would surpass them one day. Even when she returned to the barracks, the challenge didn't end. Sleep was scarce, and the mental toll of constant judgment weighed heavily on her. She often lay awake at night, replaying moments of the day in her mind, searching for ways to improve, imagining herself completing tasks perfectly, visualizing the exact trajectory of her shots, the precise timing of her movements, and the control of her breath under pressure. These mental exercises became just as important as physical training, helping her sharpen her focus and maintain her determination even in the darkest moments of doubt. By the end of her first week, something subtle began to change. She was still the target of ridicule, still the newcomer labeled, "not a sniper." But there was a quiet intensity in her eyes, a focus that could not be ignored. When she touched a rope, lifted a heavy weight, or aimed at a target during practice, there was a precision and determination that spoke louder than words. Her classmates noticed it, though many would not admit it, and even the instructors began to take mental notes. She was learning, adapting, and growing stronger, both physically and mentally, with every challenge thrown her way. The harsh environment, designed to weed out the weak, instead became the crucible that forged her resolve. Each day she survived was a small victory. Each insult she endured became a silent promise that she would prove them all wrong. The first obstacle course, the first mocking words, the first doubts cast upon her ability. These were not setbacks but the foundation of her future success. She was learning a lesson that would define her career. The path to greatness is rarely gentle, and every critic is an opportunity to become stronger, faster, and smarter. By the end of the first part of her journey, she had realized that success in this elite world would not be about silencing others immediately or proving herself overnight. It would be about patience, persistence, and relentless focus. The voice that said, "You're not a sniper," would remain with her, but instead of discouraging her, it became a quiet motivator, a reminder of why she was here and what she had to achieve. Each day, each fall, each moment of ridicule was shaping her into someone who could one day silence the room, not with words, but with skill, precision, and undeniable excellence. And so the young woman pressed on. She knew the road ahead would be long and unforgiving, but she had taken the first critical step, refusing to surrender to doubt, mocking, or fear. She was here to stay, and the world of SEALs would soon realize that underestimating her would be their first and greatest mistake. The next few days of training tested her in ways she had never imagined. The early excitement of joining the SEAL program had worn off, replaced by a relentless grind of physical exhaustion, mental pressure, and constant scrutiny. Every morning began before dawn, with the cold air biting at her skin and the first rays of light barely visible on the horizon. She would lace up her boots, strap on her gear, and push herself through exercises that left her muscles screaming and her lungs gasping for air. Every step was a reminder that she had to earn her place, and that her peers were watching, ready to judge every misstep. Her classmates, who were still doubtful of her abilities, didn't make it any easier. Some whispered insults as she ran past, mocking her endurance and strength. "She'll never make it," they would say under their breath, laughing when she struggled with heavy weights or lagged behind on a long-distance run. Others were openly competitive, challenging her during drills, trying to prove that she was not fit to be here. Each taunt cut through her confidence, but she refused to give them the satisfaction of seeing her falter. She began to use their disbelief as fuel, focusing her mind on each task, imagining herself completing it perfectly while the mockery faded into the background. The challenges were not just physical, they were mental as well. SEAL training was designed to break every trainee down before building them back up stronger, and she felt that every day. Drills required precise coordination, quick thinking under pressure, and the ability to make split-second decisions. During exercises involving navigation, stealth, and teamwork, she often felt overwhelmed, falling behind her classmates or making mistakes that drew sharp criticism from instructors. Some days, she questioned herself, wondering if she truly belonged in this elite world. The weight of doubt was heavy, but she reminded herself that every soldier here had faced moments of uncertainty. It was part of the process, part of becoming a true SEAL. She began to develop a routine beyond the standard training. While her classmates rested or socialized during breaks, she would find quiet corners to practice alone, perfecting her aim with small drills or reviewing tactical movements she had observed. She studied everything meticulously, the way seasoned trainees moved, the rhythm of the instructor's commands, the wind patterns for long-distance shooting, even the angles of her own body during climbs and sprints. It was a silent dedication, and although no one noticed her extra effort at first, it was slowly transforming her. The physical challenges continued to push her limits. Long marches with heavy packs left her legs numb and her feet blistered. Obstacle courses tested her balance, strength, and endurance, and swimming exercises in cold water made her teeth chatter and her muscles seize. Yet, through every challenge, she discovered a hidden reserve of strength. She learned to pace herself, to control her breathing, to conserve energy while still moving efficiently. Each small improvement, whether climbing a rope faster or hitting a target more accurately, gave her a quiet satisfaction that no one else could see. Her mental toughness grew alongside her physical abilities. She realized that training was not just about raw strength or skill. It was about focus, patience, and resilience. When a drill went wrong, she forced herself to analyze the mistake instead of giving in to frustration. When her classmates laughed at her struggles, she refused to respond with anger or defensiveness. Instead, she absorbed their mockery, turning it into determination, telling herself that one day, they would regret underestimating her. Every insult became a silent motivator, every failure a lesson, and every challenge a chance to improve. Despite the progress she was making, acceptance from her peers was still far away. Some of them were openly hostile, trying to undermine her confidence at every opportunity. During team exercises, they would question her decisions, slow her down on purpose, or try to take control of tasks she was leading. It was frustrating and sometimes disheartening, but she learned to keep her focus on her own growth rather than seeking approval. She realized that respect could not be demanded. It had to be earned through consistent performance, skill, and integrity. By the end of the second part of her journey, she had begun to feel a subtle shift in herself. She was no longer the wide-eyed newcomer who stumbled through drills and froze under pressure. Her movements were smoother, her aim more precise, and her mind sharper. She still faced ridicule and doubt, but it no longer shook her. The young woman had learned an important lesson. Progress was not measured by immediate recognition or applause, but by small victories, repeated efforts, and the relentless refusal to give up. She also realized the power of patience. She couldn't force her peers to believe in her, and she couldn't shortcut the training. Every drop of sweat, every moment of fatigue, every taunt or doubt she faced would eventually become the foundation for her success. She began to understand that true strength was not just physical. It was the quiet confidence to keep moving forward when no one believed in you, to remain focused when everything around you seemed to be against you, and to keep your goal in sight even when the road seemed impossible. By the end of these early weeks, she was still underestimated by many, but she was no longer just surviving, she was evolving. The ridicule had become background noise, and her resolve had become the defining force of her journey. She was slowly building the skills, endurance, and mental toughness that would one day silence every doubt and mockery. And though the path ahead remained daunting, she knew that she had begun to find her place in a world that seemed intent on proving she didn't belong. A world that, in time, would come to recognize her extraordinary skill and determination. After weeks of grueling training, the young woman began to notice small changes in herself. The early struggles, the mocking whispers, and the endless drills were slowly shaping her into someone stronger, sharper, and more focused. But it wasn't just her body that was changing. Her mind was growing stronger too. She had learned to tune out the laughter, the side glances, and the judgmental remarks. Instead of letting the words, "You're not a sniper," crush her, she started turning them into a quiet motivation, a reminder of why she had chosen this path and what she wanted to achieve. One day, during a shooting drill, something remarkable happened. The instructors set up a challenging target far, moving, and at an awkward angle. Many of her peers hesitated, adjusting their stance, calculating the wind, and second-guessing themselves. She, however, moved with calm precision. She had spent countless nights practicing her aim in her mind, visualizing the trajectory of the bullet, the steadiness of her hands, and the control of her breath. Now it all came together. When she took her shot, the target was hit perfectly. There was a moment of silence, sharp and electric. Her classmates, who had spent weeks mocking her, froze in disbelief. Some tried to brush it off, pretending it was luck, but even they couldn't ignore what they had just seen. The instructors, usually stern and emotionless, gave subtle nods of approval. It was the first clear evidence that she was capable of more than anyone had expected. For her, it wasn't about showing off or proving them wrong. It was a quiet victory, a confirmation that her hard work and determination were paying off. Despite this small triumph, the road was far from smooth. Many of her peers still doubted her, and some were openly resentful of her sudden success. They whispered behind her back, questioning whether she could repeat her performance, whether she could handle the next challenge, whether she truly had what it took to become a sniper. Each comment could have discouraged her, but by now she had developed a resilience that carried her through. She learned to focus only on what she could control: her preparation, her skill, and her mindset. Everything else was background noise. The physical training became even more intense. Long marches, climbing exercises, swimming drills in freezing water, and hours of tactical maneuvers tested every ounce of her strength and endurance. She pushed herself harder than ever, often training in the shadows when no one was watching, practicing shots, movements, and strategies alone. While her peers socialized or rested, she quietly honed her skills, building the quiet confidence that would one day set her apart. But it wasn't just about physical strength or skill. Mental focus became her secret weapon. She learned to block out distractions, to stay calm under pressure, and to visualize success in every situation. During team exercises, when chaos erupted or mistakes were made, she remained steady, analyzing every movement, anticipating challenges, and acting with precision. Her growing confidence was subtle but undeniable. She no longer flinched at criticism or mocked her own mistakes. Instead, she learned from them, letting each failure become a stepping stone toward mastery. By this stage, a shift began to happen in the way some of her peers looked at her. Though most still doubted her abilities, a few began to notice her dedication and skill. They whispered less, watched more closely, and even started seeking her advice on certain tasks. The young woman, however, did not let this change her focus. She understood that respect could not be demanded or forced. It had to be earned through consistent effort and excellence. Her first small victory in the shooting drill gave her a taste of what was possible, but she knew that one success did not define her future. Each exercise, each mission, and each challenge was another opportunity to improve, to refine her abilities, and to prepare for the moments that truly mattered. She began to see the bigger picture. SEAL training was not just about surviving individual drills. It was about becoming a complete operator, someone who could handle any situation, adapt to any challenge, and perform under extreme pressure. By the end of this part of her journey, she had started to feel a quiet sense of pride in herself. She was no longer the wide-eyed, uncertain recruit who had stumbled through the first obstacle courses. She had learned to control her fear, focus her mind, and trust her instincts. Every small success, every silent hour of practice, and every lesson learned from failure was adding up. She was beginning to transform from someone merely trying to survive into someone capable of excelling, someone who could eventually silence every doubter with skill and precision. And though she knew the road ahead would only grow more difficult, she felt ready to face it. The taunts and whispers that had once felt crushing were now just background noise, reminders of how far she had come. She realized that the key to success was not in proving herself to others immediately, but in consistently proving herself to herself. Each step forward, each improvement, and each moment of focus brought her closer to the day when no one could question her abilities. The day when her skill and determination would speak louder than any words. By the end of part 3, she had planted the seeds of transformation. The young woman was no longer just enduring the training. She was beginning to master it. And though few knew it yet, the moment when she would truly silence her doubters was slowly approaching, one carefully calculated step at a time. The training now entered a level of intensity she had never experienced before. Every day felt longer, every drill harder, and every challenge designed to push the limits of endurance, skill, and willpower. The early days of doubt and mockery had already shaped her mindset, but the next phase demanded not just strength, but focus, precision, and mental toughness that could withstand extreme pressure. She woke up before dawn, her body aching, her muscles stiff from the previous day's exercises. Yet she forced herself into motion, knowing that falling behind was not an option. Long marches became a test of not just stamina but mental control. She carried heavy packs over uneven terrain, her legs burning, her back straining, all while maintaining complete attention to the path, the terrain, and her surroundings. Every step mattered, and a single mistake could result in falling behind or losing points in the eyes of the instructors. Her classmates, many of whom had already doubted her, continued to watch her carefully, often whispering and sometimes openly questioning whether she could keep up. But by now she had learned to ignore the noise. She focused entirely on the rhythm of her steps, the steadiness of her breathing, and the strength of her mind. Climbing exercises tested her upper body strength and balance. Walls loomed high, ropes swung taut, and each ascent required careful calculation. Her muscles screamed, her hands blistered, and her fingers were raw, but she refused to give up. While some of her classmates relied on brute strength and rushed recklessly, she moved deliberately, carefully planning each move, testing each grip, and using strategy over force. This slower, more thoughtful approach often left others baffled. Some teased her for taking too long, not realizing that her methodical movements were increasing her efficiency and safety. The water exercises were another brutal test. Cold, relentless, and exhausting, the swimming drills demanded stamina, coordination, and the ability to remain calm under extreme conditions. She fought the freezing water, the pounding waves, and the exhaustion, keeping her focus on her technique, her breathing, and her goal. While some of her peers panicked or lost focus, she discovered an unexpected strength, the ability to remain calm and controlled even when every part of her body screamed to stop. It was a lesson she would carry into every mission, every shoot, and every challenge that lay ahead. The mental challenges became as intense as the physical ones. Instructors presented complex tactical scenarios, requiring split-second decisions, strategic thinking, and flawless teamwork. Many of her classmates struggled, hesitating or making errors that cost the team points or time. She, however, began to thrive under pressure. By observing closely and using what she had learned from previous mistakes, she started anticipating problems before they arose, reacting faster, and making decisions that were precise and effective. Her peers slowly began to notice, even if they didn't voice it. Even as she grew stronger, the mocking and doubt persisted. Some classmates still tried to distract or intimidate her during exercises, testing her concentration and patience. But by now, she had developed a mental shield. She no longer reacted with anger or frustration. Instead, she treated each attempt to undermine her as another obstacle to overcome. The whispers and laughter became background noise. Nothing could shake her focus. Nothing could deter her determination. Her solitary practice continued in parallel. She stayed after drills, rehearsing movements, perfecting her aim, and running simulations in her mind. Every extra minute she spent alone became a tool for improvement, sharpening her skills in ways that were invisible to everyone else. While others rested or socialized, she invested in herself, understanding that mastery was not given. It was earned, step by step, day by day. By this point, she could see small but meaningful changes in herself. Her endurance had improved dramatically. Her strength was more controlled and efficient. Her aim and tactical thinking were sharper than ever. The early fear, doubt, and ridicule had been replaced by quiet confidence. She was learning to trust herself, her instincts, her decisions, and her abilities. Even though acceptance from her peers was not guaranteed, it no longer mattered as much. She was focused on proving herself through results, not through words or arguments. As the weeks of intense training rolled on, the young woman began to notice subtle shifts in the atmosphere. Instructors were observing her more closely, noting her efficiency, resilience, and ability to perform under pressure. A few peers began to treat her with cautious respect, acknowledging her skill even if reluctantly. She understood that respect was earned slowly, not demanded overnight, and she was ready to continue earning it, one drill at a time. By the end of this phase, she had transformed from the uncertain, struggling newcomer into a disciplined, capable, and focused trainee. The intense physical and mental challenges had forged not just her body, but her mind, her patience, and her confidence. She had learned that endurance alone was not enough. Success required focus, strategy, and resilience. She had also discovered that ridicule and doubt could be turned into motivation, transforming negativity into fuel for improvement. Though the road ahead would bring even greater challenges, the young woman now felt a deep sense of preparedness. The skills she had built, the lessons she had learned, and the strength she had discovered within herself would serve as the foundation for what was to come. She was ready to face the ultimate tests of her abilities, knowing that every step, every shot, and every decision would bring her closer to silencing the doubters and proving her place as a true SEAL sniper. By now, the young woman was no longer just surviving SEAL training. She was mastering it. And though few had fully recognized her potential yet, she knew that the moment of undeniable proof was approaching, and she would be ready. The day of the high-pressure sniper exercise had arrived, and the tension in the air was nearly tangible. The young woman knew that this was the moment she had been preparing for, a chance to prove not only her skill but also her determination and focus. The instructors had made it clear that failure was not an option. The targets were difficult, the conditions unpredictable, and the stakes higher than ever before. Every trainee felt the pressure, but for her, this was more than just another test. It was the opportunity to show that all the ridicule, doubt, and long hours of preparation had not been in vain. As the exercise began, her classmates moved with varying degrees of confidence. Some hesitated, second-guessing their approach or becoming distracted by the eyes of the instructors and their peers. Others rushed recklessly, trying to hit targets too quickly, which led to mistakes. She, however, had learned patience. She approached each challenge methodically, recalling every lesson she had absorbed over the past weeks. The importance of steady breathing, precise aim, and careful calculation. Each shot would have to count. The young woman surveyed the field carefully, noting the wind, the distance, and the position of the targets. Every detail mattered. She adjusted her stance, controlling her breathing and focusing her mind completely on the task at hand. She blocked out everything else, the whispers from her peers, the doubtful glances, even the pressure of knowing all eyes were on her. In that moment, she existed only in the rhythm of her movements, the alignment of her shot, and the silent promise she had made to herself, to succeed. When she finally fired her first shot, it was perfect. The target was hit dead center. The instructors gave a subtle nod of approval, but the real impact was on her peers. Those who had mocked her, who had whispered, "You're not a sniper," and doubted her every move, were momentarily stunned. Their laughter and teasing disappeared, replaced by a mixture of surprise and respect. For her, though, this was just the beginning. She had more targets to engage, more precision to demonstrate, and more obstacles to overcome. Each successive shot required careful calculation, attention to detail, and patience. She adjusted for the wind, the shifting angle, and even the smallest environmental changes. Her training, her late-night practice, and her observation of her classmates all came together seamlessly. She moved with confidence, executing each shot with precision and calm that surprised even the instructors. By now, it was clear to everyone watching that this was not luck. This was skill, honed through relentless determination and quiet discipline. The exercise was designed to push every trainee to their limits, and she felt the strain in her muscles, her mind, and even her resolve. Her legs shook slightly from fatigue, and her eyes strained from focusing for so long. But she did not allow herself to falter. She reminded herself of every mocking word, every doubt, and every challenging day she had endured to reach this point. Instead of breaking her spirit, those memories fueled her focus. She felt a deep, calm confidence, the confidence of someone who had prepared, persisted, and now was ready to demonstrate her ability when it mattered most. By the end of the exercise, the results spoke for themselves. Every target had been hit with precision, every movement had been executed with control, and her performance had surpassed many of her peers. The room, once filled with whispers and doubt, fell into silence. Even the instructors, who had seen countless trainees come and go, acknowledged the skill she had displayed. She had proven herself not through words or confrontation, but through undeniable ability. Her classmates, who had once mocked and doubted her, were left speechless. Some offered grudging nods of respect, while others simply avoided looking directly at her, as if recognizing in silence the quiet power of her achievement. The young woman understood that respect like this could not be forced. It had to be earned through consistent performance, focus, and excellence. And today she had earned it. But more importantly, she had proven something to herself. Every moment of struggle, every insult, every late-night practice had led to this turning point. She had learned that success was not about proving doubters wrong in the moment. It was about quiet preparation, focus, and persistence. By demonstrating her skill under pressure, she had transformed her past frustrations into a source of strength and resilience. As she stepped away from the field, her mind was clear. The exercise had shown her the power of patience, preparation, and self-belief. She had silenced the mocking voices for now, not through confrontation or argument, but through action and excellence. And although she knew there would be more challenges ahead, she had gained something far more valuable than temporary approval: confidence in herself and in her ability to rise above doubt, fear, and criticism. By the end of this turning point, It was evident that the young woman was no longer just surviving the grueling SEAL training. She was beginning to master it. She had proven that discipline, focus, and relentless effort could overcome even the harshest skepticism. Her journey was far from over, but this day marked a defining moment in her transformation, a moment that would set the stage for the recognition and respect she would eventually earn. The young woman had discovered the true essence of being a sniper: patience, precision, and calm under pressure. The skills she demonstrated today were not simply physical. They were mental, emotional, and strategic. She had shown that preparation, perseverance, and focus could overcome every challenge, and that even the loudest doubters could be silenced not with words, but with undeniable excellence. After her impressive performance during the high-pressure sniper exercise, the atmosphere around her began to shift, but slowly, subtly, and almost imperceptibly at first. She could feel it in the way instructors watched her more carefully, in the way some of her classmates began to exchange glances when she walked by, and in the quiet acknowledgement of her skill that could no longer be ignored. The mocking and doubt had not completely disappeared, but a new force had entered her world: respect. And not just the grudging kind from peers, but the kind that comes from consistently proving yourself under pressure. The instructors began to assign her more responsibility during drills. They watched her lead small tasks, placing her in positions where her decisions, accuracy, and leadership could be tested. She approached these responsibilities with the same meticulous focus that had carried her through earlier challenges. Every decision was calculated, every action precise, and every movement deliberate. She understood that these assignments were not just tests of skill, but opportunities to demonstrate that she could handle more than basic training, that she had the mental toughness and strategic thinking required to be an elite SEAL sniper. Her peers, meanwhile, had begun to take notice of her growing competence. A few of the more skeptical trainees watched her closely, perhaps in disbelief, as she executed tasks with calm efficiency. There were still whispers and occasional teasing, but the tone had changed. Now, some of the murmurs carried a sense of curiosity and even admiration. They began to recognize that she was no longer just surviving the training. She was excelling in ways they had not expected. She continued her own routine of extra practice. While others rested or socialized, she stayed late, running drills alone, rehearsing tactical movements and perfecting her aim. These quiet hours of dedication were becoming the invisible engine behind her success. She understood something critical. Recognition might be slow, and respect might not come immediately, but skill earned in silence and precision honed through hard work could not be denied. The physical challenges continued, more demanding than ever. She was pushed to complete long endurance runs, carry heavy packs across rough terrain, and navigate treacherous courses that tested every part of her body. Each challenge was paired with a mental component: decision-making under pressure, precise targeting, and the ability to remain calm when everything seemed to work against her. She was no stranger to exhaustion, but exhaustion had become something she could endure without faltering. Her body had adapted to the demands, but even more importantly, her mind had adapted. She had learned to remain calm, analyze situations, and execute with precision even when fatigue threatened to cloud her focus. One day, during a complex field exercise involving stealth, navigation, and target acquisition, her skills became even more apparent. While other trainees hesitated or made mistakes under pressure, she moved silently, efficiently, and strategically. She assessed the terrain, anticipated potential obstacles, and executed her plan flawlessly. The instructors, who had seen countless trainees struggle, quietly observed her movements with approval. For the first time, a small group of her peers nodded toward her as she completed the task. Not with words, but with recognition of competence. It was subtle, but it mattered more than any verbal praise. At the same time, she noticed a growing sense of confidence in herself. The doubts that had plagued her during the first weeks of training had been replaced by a quiet certainty in her abilities. She knew that she could handle the most difficult challenges, not because others believed in her, but because she had trained herself to be capable, precise, and resilient. She had developed a mental strength that allowed her to block out distractions, resist fear, and perform under extreme pressure. Even though the recognition was growing, she did not allow it to make her complacent. She knew that respect earned could be lost just as quickly as it was gained. Each drill, each exercise, each mission required full attention and effort. She continued to push herself beyond what was comfortable, refining every movement, calculating every shot, and learning from every mistake. This relentless pursuit of mastery was what set her apart, not raw talent, but the ability to combine skill, focus, and determination under extreme conditions. By the end of this phase, a clear pattern had emerged. The young woman was no longer seen as the doubtful newcomer who might not belong. Instead, she was becoming a recognized and respected member of her unit. Instructors began consulting her on tactical approaches during exercises, acknowledging her insight and judgment. A few peers, once openly critical, now sought her guidance during drills, recognizing her competence and ability to remain calm under pressure. Perhaps most importantly, she had learned a lesson that would stay with her forever. True respect is not given. It is earned through consistent action, skill, and perseverance. It is not a matter of seeking approval, but of proving oneself through results, day after day, under the toughest conditions imaginable. She realized that her journey was not about silencing doubters with words, but about demonstrating ability with every action, every decision, and every precise shot. By the end of this part of her story, the young woman had firmly established herself as a capable, focused, and resilient trainee. The path ahead remained challenging, with even greater tests waiting, but she had laid the foundation of skill, confidence, and quiet authority that would allow her to face what came next. She was no longer merely surviving SEAL training. She was mastering it one calculated step at a time. And though the final proof of her abilities had yet to come, it was becoming clear to everyone, including herself, that she was a force to be reckoned with. The moment she had been preparing for finally arrived. The ultimate sniper evaluation. This was the test that would separate those who were truly capable from those who could only pretend. The tension in the training grounds was thick, almost electric. Every trainee knew that failure could mean months of additional training or even dismissal, and the pressure was intense. The young woman, however, approached the day with calm determination. She had spent weeks, even months, building her skill, endurance, and focus, and now everything she had learned would be put to the test. The exercise was designed to simulate a real mission under extreme conditions. Targets were distant and often obscured, wind and terrain added complexity, and every movement could make the difference between success and failure. Her instructors reminded the trainees that this was not just about hitting targets. It was about patience, precision, mental toughness, and the ability to remain calm under pressure. For her, this was more than just a challenge. It was an opportunity to prove to herself that she belonged among the elite. When the exercise began, the young woman moved methodically. She scanned the field carefully, noting the exact positions of the targets, the patterns of the wind, and any subtle environmental shifts that could affect her shots. Her body was steady, her breathing controlled, and her mind fully focused. She blocked out the distractions, the whispers from her peers, the doubtful glances, even the weight of the moment itself. Everything faded except for the task in front of her. As she raised her rifle and took the first shot, it was clear that this was not luck. The bullet hit the target with deadly accuracy. There was a brief pause in the surrounding noise, a moment of silent recognition from the instructors. Her classmates, some of whom had spent weeks mocking her, froze in astonishment. This was the young woman who had once stumbled through drills, the one they had doubted, and now she was performing flawlessly under conditions that pushed everyone to their limits. With each subsequent shot, her precision and focus only grew stronger. She calculated the wind, adjusted her angle, and timed her breathing perfectly. Every movement was deliberate, every action exact. She had internalized the countless hours of training, the late-night practice, and the lessons learned from earlier mistakes. It was as if all the ridicule, doubt, and exhaustion had been transformed into a quiet power, allowing her to move with complete control and confidence. Her peers watched in stunned silence. Some whispered among themselves, hardly daring to believe what they were seeing. The young woman had become more than a trainee. She was a force of precision and focus that none of them had anticipated. Even those who had mocked her now realized that her skill was real, undeniable, and earned through relentless determination. She had not only survived the grueling training, she had mastered it in a way that was impossible to ignore. The instructors observed with a mixture of pride and approval. They could see the results of weeks of preparation, mental conditioning, and focus practice. Her movements were efficient, her aim precise, and her strategy flawless. She demonstrated everything a sniper needed: patience, accuracy, control, and calm under pressure. This was not just a test of skill. It was a test of character, and she had passed with distinction. By the time the final shot was fired, it was clear that she had set herself apart from the rest of the group. The young woman had completed the exercise with perfect execution, earning the recognition of instructors and peers alike. The whispers of doubt had been replaced by admiration and, in some cases, awe. She had proven that her ability was not a fluke, but the result of determination, preparation, and an unyielding commitment to excellence. The ultimate realization came when the results were announced. Her name was at the top of the list. The very people who had once mocked her, doubted her, and whispered, "You're not a sniper," now looked on in quiet respect. Some nodded, some avoided eye contact, and some simply watched in disbelief. But one thing was undeniable. She had earned her place, and her call sign would now be remembered as a symbol of skill, focus, and resilience. For the young woman, the victory was not just about recognition from others. It was about proving to herself that she could overcome doubt, ridicule, and exhaustion. Every moment of struggle, every taunt, every long hour of preparation had led to this point. She had learned that true strength comes not from physical power alone, but from focus, patience, and the ability to remain calm under pressure. She had transformed every challenge into an opportunity to grow stronger, more precise, and more confident. By the end of this ultimate evaluation, she had achieved something far greater than hitting targets or earning high scores. She had demonstrated the power of persistence, the value of preparation, and the unshakable strength of a focused mind. Her journey had not been easy, but it had been transformative. She had silenced her doubters not with words or confrontation, but with action, skill, and excellence. The young woman stepped away from the field, breathing steadily, her mind calm. The moment of triumph had arrived, and with it came a deep sense of confidence. She had proven that she belonged among the elite, that her dedication and determination could overcome doubt, and that her skills were undeniable. The ultimate sniper evaluation had tested every part of her, body, mind, and spirit, and she had emerged victorious, ready for the next challenges that lay ahead. After the ultimate sniper evaluation, the young woman could feel the atmosphere around her shifting completely. The mockery, the doubts, and the whispers of "you're not a sniper" that had followed her since day one had faded into silence. Every taunt that once cut deep now felt like fuel that had driven her to this very moment. She had endured weeks of grueling physical drills, mental challenges, and relentless pressure. And now she stood not just as a survivor, but as someone who had earned undeniable respect. Her peers, instructors, and even herself could no longer ignore the transformation that had taken place. The recognition began quietly. Instructors who had once been stern and distant now approached her with a different tone, one of acknowledgement and approval. They spoke to her about strategy, about lessons learned, and about the precision she had shown during every exercise. They asked her opinions during tactical drills, seeking her input on decisions that required skill, judgment, and calm under pressure. It was a subtle but clear signal that she was no longer just another trainee. She was someone whose skill and focus had earned a place among the best. Her peers, too, had started to notice. Those who had mocked her or doubted her from the start now looked at her with a mixture of surprise, respect, and, in some cases, admiration. Some approached her for advice, realizing that she had mastered skills they themselves were still struggling to perfect. Others simply gave her a quiet nod when her performance surpassed expectations. No words needed. They understood without saying it that she had proven herself. The young woman did not let the attention distract her. She had learned that respect and recognition were earned through consistent action, not through seeking approval. Every glance of admiration and every nod of acknowledgement simply confirmed what she already knew. She was capable, skilled, and worthy of her place. It wasn't just about the praise, however. The real proof of her transformation came during practical missions and exercises, where her skills were tested under pressure. She moved with precision, executed strategies flawlessly, and demonstrated calmness even in chaotic situations. Each decision she made was calculated, each shot she took was deliberate, and every movement was purposeful. It was clear to everyone that she had become the embodiment of what it meant to be a sniper, patient, precise, and composed under extreme pressure. Her call sign, once just a label, had become a symbol. It represented not only her skill but also her resilience, determination, and transformation. When instructors or peers mentioned it, there was a new tone, one of recognition and respect. The very same call sign that had been associated with doubt and mockery had now become a marker of excellence. Every time it was used, it reminded her of the journey she had taken. The falls, the struggles, the relentless training, and the moments when she could have given up but didn't. Even those who had doubted her from the beginning had to admit that they were wrong. The whispers of "she can't do it" had been replaced by a quiet acknowledgement. She had done it. She had risen above the ridicule, mastered every skill, and proven herself in ways that words could not describe. Her actions spoke louder than any criticism, and her precision, patience, and composure had silenced the doubters completely. As she walked through the training grounds, there was a noticeable change in how people interacted with her. Some sought guidance. Others gave her a quiet nod of respect. The young woman had earned a place not just by surviving the physical challenges, but by showing unwavering focus, mental strength, and determination. She had transformed from a hesitant, doubted newcomer into a skilled, respected, and capable sniper, someone who could be trusted in critical missions and counted on when stakes were high. Perhaps the most powerful aspect of this transformation was the sense of self-confidence she had gained. She no longer relied on the approval or acknowledgement of others to validate her abilities. She had proven to herself, beyond any doubt, that she could rise above adversity, overcome challenges, and excel under pressure. The long nights of practice, the physical exhaustion, and the mental strain had all built not just skill, but an unshakable belief in her own capability. The culmination of her journey was not just a personal victory. It was a lesson in resilience and perseverance. She had shown that determination and focus could overcome doubt and criticism, and that true skill comes not from shortcuts or luck, but from relentless effort, patience, and preparation. Her story became a quiet inspiration to others, a living example that success is possible even in the harshest conditions, and that perseverance can silence even the harshest critics. By the end of her training, the young woman had achieved more than just the title of sniper. She had earned respect, proven her skill, and, most importantly, transformed herself. Every challenge, every taunt, every moment of doubt had contributed to this transformation. She had faced adversity head-on and emerged stronger, more confident, and undeniably capable. Her journey was complete, and the voice that once mocked her was now a distant memory, replaced by the quiet acknowledgement of excellence. And in that acknowledgement, in the calm respect of instructors and peers, she found not just victory, but validation of every sacrifice, every effort, and every lesson learned. She had silenced the doubters, not with words, but with action. Her call sign had become more than a name. It was a symbol of triumph, of resilience, and of the power of unwavering determination. The young woman had proven, beyond any doubt, that she belonged, and that her skill and focus would be remembered long after the whispers of ridicule had faded.